Talking about porn got me sweaty. Woo!
Damn.
Do another intro? Welcome to another fun-filled episode of The Race Cards. I am Jake Bokey, this is Ronald and Emil. We have Instagrams, Twitters, Facebooks, Tumblrs.
Guns on your tumblers.
Today we're going to be talking about the heroin epidemic in America.
Yes.
Which, have you ever tried heroin?
No, I've never tried heroin. It always looked like...
I've tried heroin.
You've tried heroin before?
I smoked heroin. I got there way before it was vogue. Like, this is old news. I smoked some heroin back in the 90s. A couple of weeks ago, Ronald emailed me an article from the New York Times, which was titled, "In Heroin Crisis, White Families Seek a Gentler War on Drugs." It was written by Catherine Q. Seeley.
What struck me about this is that now that, and the article is basically about it reaching the suburbs and it reaching the epidemic, reaching white families, and those people being in the positions to affect change as it relates to drug sentencing.
Really. I'm glad you brought that up. The quote from the article, "Because the demographic of people affected are more white, more middle class, these are parents who are empowered. They know how to call a legislator. They know how to get angry with their insurance company. They know how to advocate. They have been so instrumental in changing the conversation." I thought that was fucking ridiculous.
Why did you think that was ridiculous?
Black people don't know how to call their congressman. I believe black people know how to call their congressman. It implies the black community is not good at organizing, and we see examples that is false all throughout recent history. The opening line from the New York Times article was, "When the nation's long-running war against drugs was defined by the crack epidemic and based in poor, predominantly black urban areas, the public response was defined by zero tolerance and stiff prison sentences." This is absolutely true.
That's the point I was trying to make.
Undeniably true, but you have to look at who advocated zero tolerance. Who was in charge then? Who was the guy in the White House?
Ronald Reagan.
And who was the lady who was saying, "Just say no"?
Nancy Reagan.
And what were their occupations prior to being politicians?
Well, he was the governor, and then before that, he was an actor.
They were actors. They were actors who were given lines, and the lines were given to them by people like Jerry fucking Falwell. But leadership looks a lot different now. Even in the Republican Party, you have Carly Fiorina.
Fiorina.
Exactly.
She's from Brooklyn.
Jeb Bush and Chris Christie all advocating for the decriminalization of addiction. So it's not just the Democrats anymore. People are coming around on this, and
the key is why they're coming around on it, though.
I think it's numbers.
I don't think it's numbers.
About 4% of the black community uses drugs. That's 4% of 13%. Statistically, that's like fucking nobody.
Well, but it's not nobody.
No, they're actually human beings, and they have human problems. And I'm just saying,
I know
if
what
you're
you mean.
looking at
Numbers,
if you're
though.
a politician who's looking at nationwide numbers,
hard facts, data, yes. Mm-hmm. If you look at it that way, then it's minuscule overall on the macro level.
It's very easy to pick on those people because even if they all rallied, which they won't because they're on drugs, they're not really going to give you a problem.
No, I mean, it's a very wicked strategy that worked.
In this article and in the next article, there's a discussion of what's going on now with heroin and a discussion of what was happening in the 80s with crack, in the 90s, and all the way through to today to the Fair Sentencing Act, which we'll get to in a second.
Okay.
But these are very, very, very different drugs that cause very, very, very different reactions. I don't know what the different thing that it does to your brain is, even compared to cocaine, which it's fucking made from cocaine. I did cocaine twice this year. But you know what? I only did it twice. So when they talk about those things, I think these are two completely different issues, which brings us to mandatory minimums. Okay. And mandatory minimums have traditionally been viewed as incredibly racist. And
you don't say.
Here's my problem with mandatory minimums. They're fucking idiotic. It's stupid. It's the dumbest shit that I've ever heard in my entire life because we have these things in America called judges. Yeah. And it's their job to render judgment.
Discernment.
If you give them mandatory minimums, they can't fucking do that. What do you even got the goddamn judge for?
Yeah, Judge Dredd.
This is the list of all the crimes that they have mandatory minimum sentences for. These are the instances where we've tied judges' hands. Drug trafficking, drug importing and exporting, guns, immigration, identity theft, sex offenses / child porn, the 3 strikes law, which is in itself a mandatory minimum that is ridiculous, weapons, explosives, airplane hijacking, murder of/crimes against children, obstruction of justice, food stamps, kidnapping hostages, bank robbery, racketeering, organized crime, fraud, bribery, white-collar crime, piracy, assaulting a member of the military or their family, interference with civil examination, stalking, treason, trespassing on federal land, sale of HIV-positive tissues or fluids, refusal to operate railroads or telegraph lines, violating the Merchant Marine Act, and failure to report seaboard saloon purchases to customers. Ronald sent me 2 articles. He sent me one 2 weeks ago, and he sent me one about 2 or 3 days ago. And the second article was Gentler War on Drugs for Whites is a Smack in Black America's Face, which we were talking about it before.
Black?
We started talking. No, black's not in quotation marks,
okay.
but smack is, and I was trying to figure out why, and it's because it's a pun. Isn't that funny? She made a pun about people dying.
Niggas wanna bust their guns. They wanna one-on-one.
I looked over all of these headlines, and it seems like her job is to be mad at white America on behalf of Black America.
A little passive-aggressive there, Jacob. I don't know.
It's not aggressive.
What is her actual title, though?
Her actual title is cultural critic and senior writer.
The word critic in itself implies that she's going to be critiquing things regardless, and this just happens to be the things that she's critiquing.
Sometimes Roper gives a good review. There is justice for 6-year-old Jeremy Mandis. There should be justice for Black children too, which I don't disagree with, but why can't we just be happy that there was justice for Jeremy Mandis?
So you look at Tamar Rice, you look at Michael Brown, you look at Trayvon Martin. She's simply saying those people, those young men, didn't get justice. And she's correlating it with a story that so happens to have a white child in it, so you use whatever tool you have. She's not creating this. She's not going out and killing people and then writing a story. She's not Dexter.
No, but she's setting up a framework where justice for Jeremy Mandis is a negative, and I don't really appreciate that.
I think that's a false equivalency.
Which is exactly what she does in this article. She makes it sound like a reduction in the war on drugs is a negative, and I have a problem with that because I am not a fan of the war on drugs, never have been. The next article down, if Daniel Holtzclaw's victims were white, everyone would know his name. Because like everybody else, I don't actually know who he is. But apparently I would if his victims had been white.
Ding, 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 ding.
Although, okay, please name for me a serial rapist.
Ted Bundy.
Who didn't also murder his victims.
Who didn't also murder Bill Cosby.
So she wrote an article, and it started, one white New Hampshire man interviewed for the piece talks about how he viewed people battling addiction as junkies until he recognized their faces in his own high-achieving, privileged daughter. So basically what she's saying is that he was unable to relate to a problem until he had personal experience with it.
What she quotes him in the article as saying.
But she makes him sound like a dick, and she makes it seem like he should have been aware of it because Black people were dying.
All she's doing is she's painting a narrative. She has 1,300 words, 900 words, whatever her editor tells her that she needs to get a point across. That's black and white. I didn't recognize these people. He said he had an office in New York City during the height of some of the drug era, I think he said he had his office, in the 70s and 80s. So that's the height of the crack era. And he couldn't identify with those people because they didn't look like him. That's fine. She needs to be able to get to that point and go on.
No, not look like him. Because it wasn't actually a member of his family and he didn't actually have to deal with the problem. It didn't have anything to do with he saw a white girl on the news and he was like, oh, that's terrible.
I see what you're saying about that point, but I don't think that was her point. I think her point was that's a very human thing. I don't think she was trying to make him look like a dick.
These numbers are from the CDC. Deaths from heroin rose to 8,260 people in 2013, quadrupling since the year 2000 and aggravating what some were already calling the worst overdose epidemic in United States history. She asterisks, nearly 90% of those who tried heroin for the first time in the last decade were white. And then she says, no wonder compassion was the word of the day. That seems pretty shitty to me. I don't have any problem with people having compassion for 8,260 deaths.
But what she's trying to say is that when the community was being ravaged, and it was a black community, it was lock them up, throw away the key. But now that it's hitting white communities, it's compassion.
And I'm saying that in that observation, she is overlooking a number of factors in the sake of creating a narrative.
It's always a knee-jerk reaction to read a couple of numbers, find out what a person did, but see who supported that person, see where the money from, the lobbying money was coming from for these bills. Then you get to the root of the cause. When you follow that trace of that paper, as much as you can follow it, that's when you get the root Because it's all about paper. Slavery was about paper. Colonization was about that bread, cheese, and dough. It's all about money and about power. I mean, white people would enslave themselves as they could, and they did to a certain extent.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they didn't have the DNA of the black man to be able to endure and build a country and still come out on top and have a #1 album.
But that was another episode of the Race Cards. Ronald Neal, Jacob Boki. This is YouTube. You're at your house or on a train or really, you could be anywhere. You could be fucking anywhere
Mérida, Mexico.
right now. Are you in Mexico? Dude, fucking grab us something, would you?
Punta Cana.
Bring it back.
Port-au-Prince.
Ooh, give me a sugar skull.
I can go back to my life in Squaresville anytime, baby.
Going to hell, so I've been told. Yeah, 'cause rock and roll is bad for